They didn't leave with a scream. They didn't leave with thunder. They left with silence. And silence. Silence has a way of echoing louder than any betrayal ever could. The door didn't slam. The sky didn't break. But something inside me did. That's the thing about their absence. It doesn't arrive like a storm. It seeps in, like cold air under a locked door. Slow, inevitable, relentless. At first, you don't notice it. You tell yourself they're just busy. You tell yourself it's just time, just distance, just noise. But silence, it grows, it spreads, it starts to feed on everything. Every unanswered message, every night spent staring at the ceiling, every thought you try to bury starts to crawl back up. It wasn't their goodbye that broke me. It was the quiet that followed, because goodbyes at least give you something to hold on to. Words, anger, closure. But silence? Silence gives you nothing. No shape, no reason, no end. And in that nothingness, I met myself. Not the version they saw, not the version that begged to be understood, but the one who sits alone in the dark and listens. The walls didn't speak, but their silence screamed. Empty rooms have a weight, not the kind you can measure in pounds, but the kind that presses on your chest until breathing feels like a war you never signed up for. I learned how loud a phone can be when it doesn't ring. I learned how heavy a room can feel when no one walks through the door. I learned that absence is a language, and it speaks with more truth than words ever could. I used to fear being alone. I thought loneliness was a punishment, but that was the lie. The truth? Silence is the beginning of rebirth, because in the noise, you hear them. But in the silence, you hear you. You hear the breath you forgot to notice. The heart that kept beating even when they walked away. The fire that kept burning beneath the ashes. They thought their absence would break me, but it became my greatest teacher. Pain taught me how to survive. Silence taught me how to listen. And their absence taught me how to rise. The seed of transformation never grows in applause. It grows in quiet nights, clenched fists, and eyes that refuse to close. It grows where no one is watching, where no one believes in you anymore, where you become your own proof. Some people teach you through love, others through absence. And absence, my friend, is the cruelest and the most honest teacher of all. Because it doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't give you mercy. It doesn't tell you what to do. It throws you into the void and whispers, "Build wings or die here." That's what the silence did to me. It stripped me. It burned me. And then it rebuilt me. Not as the man I was, but as the storm I was meant to become. So tonight, if you're sitting in that cold silence, if you feel the weight pressing on your chest, don't beg the odd silence to end. Listen to it, because one day, you'll realize it wasn't your punishment. It was your beginning. The silence didn't break me. It built the monster they'll never be ready to face. Silence doesn't just sit beside you. It gets inside you, like water dripping into stone. Slow, patient, breaking you in ways no storm ever could. When the noise of the world fades, you start to hear something else. Your heartbeat. The breathing you forgot belonged to a fighter. the pulse of something ancient stirring beneath your skin. The void doesn't speak in words, it speaks in echoes, and those echoes will either drown you or forge you. When they're gone, the world doesn't stop, it just gets quieter. And in that quiet, your mind becomes a battlefield. Every memory turns into a blade. Every smile becomes a scar. Every "I'll always be there" becomes an echo that won't shut up. But pain is an honest teacher. It strips you of illusions. It makes you look in the mirror and meet the version of yourself that's been buried beneath comfort. No more excuses. No more borrowed strength, just you and the silence. In that silence, I learned the truth. No one is coming. No one is saving you. No one will hand you your throne. You want power? You forge it. You want respect? You bleed for it. You want to rise? You build the fire with your bare hands. I used to think pain was a cage, but I was wrong. Pain is a hammer, and silence is the forge. It bends you, breaks you, but if you endure, it makes you unbreakable. There's something dangerous about a man left alone with nothing but silence. Because in that stillness, he starts remembering who the hell he is. He remembers the nights he survived when no one cared. The storms he walked through when no one saw. The wars he fought with a smile on his face and blood in his mouth. And something shifts. A quiet rebellion starts to grow inside. A voice, not loud, but certain. I will not die here. Absence isn't just a void, it's a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. They don't flatter. They don't comfort. They show you what's left when everything else is gone. I stared into that mirror, and I didn't see the broken boy they left behind. I saw the shadow of the man I could become. The silence didn't pity me. It demanded something from me. Strength, fire, war. You either break inside the void, or you become something the void fears. That's the rule. That's the law. The silence isn't kind. It isn't gentle. It doesn't give second chances. But if you rise within it, it crowns you in ways applause never could. There's a reason legends are born in isolation. Not in crowded rooms. Not in loud cheers. But in quiet places where no one believes in them anymore. The wolf isn't made in the light. He's carved in the dark. And every moment of silence is a blade against his skin. Sharpening, shaping, forging. They thought leaving would destroy me. They thought silence would bury me. They didn't realize it would build me. I became addicted to the quiet, not because it was peaceful, but because it was real. In the quiet, you can't lie to yourself. You can't hide behind their words. You either face your pain, or you rot inside it. And I chose to face it. I chose to bleed in the dark, so I could rise in the light. They left me in the void, not knowing the void is where kings are forged. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with a knife. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it whispers your name like a promise. And sometimes it waits, patiently, quietly, until your guard is down and your heart is open. They didn't stab me in the back. They looked me in the eyes and watched me bleed. The cruelest wounds aren't carved by enemies. They're carved by hands you once held with trust. I remember the moment vividly, not the day, not the hour, But the silence right before the truth hit me like a storm. The air was still. The world didn't shake, but my soul cracked. The betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't a war cry. It was a whisper that shattered everything I believed in. When you love deeply, betrayal doesn't just hurt, it kills. Not your body, your faith, your softness, your belief in forever. The knife they used wasn't steel, it was their absence, their lies, their coldness dressed as kindness. And I, like a fool, kept hoping they'd turn around, hoping the person I saw was real, hoping love would be enough. But love isn't enough when it's only yours. And trust isn't strength when it's one-sided. The cruelest part wasn't the lie. It was realizing they meant it when they left. They weren't lost. They were done. Every promise they made became a noose. Every always they whispered became a ghost. And I learned that monsters don't come with red eyes and claws. They come with familiar faces and warm voices. They swore they cared. They swore they'd stay. But betrayal always wears the costume of devotion. And I believed it. Because I saw them not as they were, but as I needed them to be. I died that day, not the way the world understands death, but in a way only the betrayed can comprehend. A part of me, the soft, trusting part, was buried beneath their silence. And the thing that rose from those ashes wasn't the same. There's a moment right after betrayal where everything slows down. The noise fades. The world becomes sharper, colder. You start remembering every red flag you ignored, every instinct you silenced, every truth you refused to see. Not because you were blind, but because you loved too hard to admit the truth. That's what betrayal does. It doesn't just break you, it rewrites you. The fire inside doesn't burn warm anymore. It burns cold, sharp, focused, ruthless. I stopped waiting for apologies. I stopped begging for explanations, because what broke me wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing they never cared enough to feel guilty. Betrayal gives birth to something dangerous, something quiet, something patient, a version of yourself that no longer needs saving. They thought they killed me, but they only killed the part of me that needed them. And what rose in its place is the nightmare they'll never outrun. There's a beauty in betrayal, a brutal, merciless beauty, because it teaches you where your real strength lives. It doesn't live in their hands. It doesn't live in their love. It lives in the fire they left behind. I became my own army, my own storm, my own vengeance, and the silence that once drowned me now obeys me. They wanted me weak. They wanted me broken. But betrayal doesn't break warriors. It builds them. I am not the same man who trusted so easily. I am not the same soul who begged to be seen. I have become something else. The kind of darkness that remembers. The kind of fire that does not forgive. The kind of storm that returns. Not to ask for love, but to conquer. They will never understand what they created, because they were never built to survive the silence they left behind. But I was, and that's why I won't just rise. I'll reign. They killed the man who loved them, and gave birth to the storm that will outlive them. I didn't heal, I transformed. People talk about healing like it's gentle, like it's soft light and warm hands. But what I went through wasn't healing, it was war. No one saw the nights I clenched my fists until my knuckles bled. No one heard the silent screams that shattered my ribs. No one stood beside me when my soul was on fire. I wasn't rebuilding a heart, I was forging a weapon. Their betrayal wasn't the end, it was the spark, the match that lit the fire I never knew I carried. In their absence, I found something brutal, something ancient, something that didn't beg, didn't break, didn't kneel. It's funny. They thought their silence would bury me, but they forgot. Seeds grow best underground. They thought walking away would make me weaker, but pain doesn't make men soft. It makes monsters. I stopped chasing love. I started chasing power. Not the kind that controls others. The kind that makes you untouchable, unshakable, unbreakable. I became the storm I used to fear. Not loud, not desperate, but steady, unstoppable. Every night became a battlefield. Every tear became steel. Every breath, a promise. I trained in the shadows they left behind, not to prove them wrong, but to bury the version of me that begged for their mercy. The weak boy who trusted too easily died in their silence. The man who rose from that grave carried a crown of scars. I stopped explaining my pain. I stopped justifying my rage. I embraced it. I let it become my armor. The world doesn't respect softness. It respects power. And power is born where love dies. They gave me fire. I gave that fire a throne. They gave me silence. I taught silence how to speak through my strength. They left me with nothing. I turned nothing into everything. People say monsters are dangerous, but they're wrong. Monsters aren't born evil. They're born from broken promises. They're forged in the spaces where love used to live. They rise when pain is no longer something to escape, but something to wield. I became that monster, not because I wanted to, but because I had no other choice. There's a power that comes from pain, a brutal clarity, a savage focus. Once you taste it, you can never go back. I learned to walk alone, not as the broken one, but as the one who builds empires from ruins. They will never recognize me again, because the man they left behind no longer exists. I don't need their voice. I don't need their apology. I don't need their love. I need war. I need the fire that taught me how to rise. Because I no longer fight to be loved. I fight to be feared. The monster inside me was never a curse. It was a crown waiting for the right betrayal to awaken it. And now it has risen. They made their choice, and I made mine. I will never kneel again. I will never beg again. I will never be soft again. I am the silence they created, but louder, stronger, hungrier. They only buried me as a man and dug up a monster wearing a crown. I stopped waiting for closure. I became it. The weak man inside me, the one who begged for explanations, died in silence. The man who rose from his grave learned something far more dangerous. I don't need their apologies. I need my throne. They thought they broke me when they left. They didn't. They built the foundation of something they'll never be able to destroy. Pain doesn't destroy warriors, it baptizes them. Every tear that burned my skin was a sword being forged. Every sleepless night was a battlefield where I learned to fight with nothing but my own breath. Every unanswered call became another layer of armor. You stop being soft when silence becomes your only friend. You stop needing them when your rage starts breathing like a beast inside your chest. And that's when something terrifying happens. You stop chasing and start becoming. They say silence is weakness, but they've never seen what silence turns into when it refuses to die. I walked through the fire they lit for me, and I didn't just survive. I owned the flames. They used to make me kneel with their absence. Now I stand. Now I rise. Now I look down at the same void that tried to swallow me whole. They will never understand what they created, because they were never built to survive the kind of pain they gave me. They ran. I stayed. They turned away. I burned. They disappeared. I transformed. Every inch of my silence became a weapon. Every scar became a crown. Every betrayal became a brick in the empire I'm building. I don't need their eyes to see me anymore. I became a storm they can feel, even in their calmest nights. I became the reminder that not everyone stays broken. Some of us turn our wounds into war drums. Some of us turn our pain into power. Some of us rise so high they can't even look us in the eyes again. This is the moment when the hunted becomes the hunter. The broken becomes the builder. The silence becomes a kingdom. I no longer search for light. I am the fire. I no longer chase closure. I am the ending. I no longer beg for mercy. I am the reckoning. This is where kings are born, not in comfort, not in applause, but in the cold, brutal dark, where no one believes in you anymore. But I believed in me, even when my hands were shaking, even when my heart was screaming, even when the world turned its back. I rose, not because it was easy, but because staying broken wasn't an option. There's a different kind of strength that grows in the shadows. A strength that doesn't need validation. A strength that doesn't crumble when tested. A strength that looks pain in the eye and says, "Try me again." They thought they could silence me with their absence, but the silence became my battlefield, and I became the king of it. Every wolf has a moment when it stops howling and starts hunting. Every warrior has a night when tears dry and the eyes sharpen. Every king has a grave he crawled out of with fire still in his lungs. This was my night, my grave, my rise, and the world will never be the same. I stopped bleeding. I started building, and the throne they abandoned now has my name carved into the iron. They always come back. The world has a strange way of circling around the fire it once tried to smother. The same people who vanished when you bled will return when you burn bright. But what they find when they return isn't the man they left. It's the storm they created, the silence they mocked, the darkness they feared. The ones who left in whispers return in awe. The ones who turned their backs on your pain now squint at the fire in your eyes. They left a lamb. They returned to a wolf. Their absence used to suffocate me. Now it bows before me. I no longer wait at locked doors. I build castles behind walls of fire. I no longer beg to be understood. I command the silence they gave me. There's a moment in every warrior's story, the moment when the past comes crawling back and realizes it no longer belongs. They won't understand the price you paid for this crown. They won't understand the nights you buried your weakness with your own hands. They'll only see the throne, never the ashes beneath it. They will call you changed, as if they didn't light the match. They will say you're cold, as if they didn't freeze your soul first. And when they stand before you, eyes trembling, they won't be facing the person they betrayed. They'll be facing the weapon they forged, the beast they starved, the king they never saw coming. I don't owe them explanations. I don't owe them softness. I don't owe them me. Their return is not a second chance. It's their punishment. Because the greatest revenge isn't revenge. It's evolution. Let them see what silence does when it's no longer broken. Let them taste the fire they left behind. Let them choke on the weight of the crown they threw away. This isn't me begging to be seen anymore. This is me commanding to be remembered. And they will remember. Not because I want them to, but because I became unforgettable. There's a line they can never cross again. Not because I built walls, but because I became a mountain, a force, an empire carved out of pain. The man they knew died in the silence they left. What stands here now is something that cannot be touched. The past will always try to return, but when it does, it won't find open arms. It will find fire. It will find steel. It will find a throne that no longer has space for ghosts. I don't need their love. I don't need their approval. I don't need their return. But they will need to live with the echo of the choice they made. Because nothing haunts a coward like the strength of the one they abandoned. I wear their betrayal like armor. I carry their silence like a crown. I walk with the storm they gave me in my blood. And when they look at me now, they will understand. I was never the weak one. They were just too blind to see what I was becoming. They left me in ruins, but when they came back, they found a kingdom, and I was already wearing the crown. It's quiet now, not the kind of silence that drowns, not the kind that crushes your lungs. This silence bows. It no longer echoes their absence. It carries my presence. It doesn't remind me of what I lost. It sings of what I became. The same stillness that once broke me is now my throne room. The same void that once swallowed me now kneels at my feet. I thank the silence, not because it was kind, but because it was honest. It didn't lie. It didn't promise forever. It showed me what I was when no one else was there. Pain taught me how to survive. Silence taught me how to listen. Betrayal taught me how to rise. Everything they thought would destroy me became the fire that built my empire. I stopped waiting for someone to return. I stopped hoping for a hand to pull me out. I learned to build with my own blood. I learned to rise on broken bones. I learned to wear my scars like armor and my rage like gold. The man they left behind is gone, but the king I became is eternal. If they hadn't left, I would have never found the wolf sleeping inside me. I would have never met the storm that carried my name. I would have never learned the language of silence or the taste of my own power. Their absence wasn't a curse. It was a coronation. A brutal, bloody, merciless rebirth. And for that, I owe them nothing. But I thank the fire. To anyone standing in that same silence tonight, bleeding, shaking, alone. I know how cold it feels. I know how heavy it gets. But understand this, that silence isn't your end. It's your beginning. You are not broken. You are being forged. The storm is not here to destroy you. It's here to crown you. You will rise, not as the person they abandoned, but as the empire they'll never be able to touch again. One day they'll hear your name in places they'll never reach. They'll feel the fire they tried to bury, and they'll realize too late. They didn't leave a victim behind. They left a king. Their absence was never my downfall. It was my coronation in the dark.